Today, I want to give you 5 tips for when you're communicating with people who are in the English speaking world. Hi there, I'm Paula Clammer. I'm a lawyer, translator, and legal English coach, and I work at the intersection between law and language, helping people who speak English as a second or foreign language to communicate effectively in English. Email etiquette is really important for law practice. You probably know this already, but what you might not know is that what's considered rude and what's not considered rude actually varies quite significantly from one legal culture to another. To reply all when the person you are communicating with has looped someone into the email exchange. If you're communicating in an email exchange with someone in the English speaking world and they loop someone in and then you loop them out and then they loop them back in, well, they're really emphasizing that they want this person to be part of the conversation. Number 2. Now, I just said reply all when someone's looped in, and this next one's going to seem like a contradiction, but it's not. I want you to pay really close attention here. Don't reply all to emails that are going out to a general email list. Sometimes in large institutions, you will have general email lists. Somebody will send out an email to everyone on that list, and there are always a couple of people who don't understand that, hey, this is a general email. It's going out to everybody. Your reply isn't relevant to everybody. Do not address professional women as Mrs. Mrs. is MRS. So I know that in some cultures, you do this, you address professional women as Mrs. as a sign of respect, to show a certain distance, to make very clear what the intention is of your communication. And in some cultures, that can be seen as just being very respectful and very polite. Unfortunately, in the Western world, and especially in the English-speaking world, it achieves the opposite. It's actually really rude to refer to professional women as Mrs. If you want to avoid any kind of mishap or being offensive in any way, especially if you're not sure if the person actually identifies as female, and you want to be really respectful of all different people, then don't do Mr., don't do Mrs., don't do any of that stuff. Just refer to people by their first and last name. So if you're addressing me, you could just say, Dear Paula Clammer. That's safe. You're not assuming anything about me. And you can tell from the way that I reply to you how I prefer to be addressed. So if you were writing to me and you said, Dear Paula Clammer, and you started your email, and when I reply to you, you see that I sign best Paula, then the next time you write to me, you can just call me Paula. That is a way of signaling that it's okay to refer to me by just my first name. Number 4, get to the point early in your email. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. In some cultures, you really tend to give a lot of background information and be very extremely polite and very aware of the fact that you're taking up a person's time, and you want to acknowledge that in your email, and you will sometimes add a very long introduction. Unfortunately, that is not perceived as polite in the English-speaking world. In fact, it can be seen as the opposite. And so I want to read you an example of an email that does that, where it's very clear that the person who wrote this email is doing their best to be very respectful and very polite, but this email would be seen as being the opposite, as being too long, taking up too much time, and being very unclear. Dear so-and-so, I hope this email finds you well and in good health. So not just well, also in good health. I'm sorry to bother you at this time, especially because this is a very busy season. So notice how the author is really apologetic. We're in the middle of much work that has to be finished before your holiday break in the United States. It is not simple to coordinate so much internationally. We are grateful to you for your assistance in all our matters. Again, it is very clear that this person is trying to be polite. The problem is that they're not getting to the point. And this is where they begin to get to the point. They say, unfortunately, there have been many complications and I need to reschedule the meeting we scheduled on December 5th by email to January 10th. When is a good time for you? Now notice how confusing this is though. It's clear that they're trying to reschedule a meeting. It's unclear whether they scheduled it on December 5th or whether it's scheduled for December 5th and they're trying to change it to December 10th. It's really unclear what is going on. So not only was the email too long, but it is also ineffective because it is unclear. And so I want you to see a more standard way that this would have been written if it had been written in the English speaking world. And this is kind of the kind of email that people in the English speaking world expect to receive. This one says, I hope this email finds you well, because many people do that now. It didn't always used to be the case, and you'll find many resources telling you don't do that, but it actually is starting to become part of some legal cultures where people do start with, I hope this email finds you well, and it's fine if you want to start like that. It's not the end of the world. Every now and then you'll get a grumpy person that's like, and they don't really care for that phrase at the beginning of an email, but it's not the end of the world. But notice how we'll go directly to the point in this rewrite. So I hope this email finds you well. Unfortunately, I need to reschedule our January 10th meeting. That's really clear. We know exactly what it is that you're writing for, and we know it immediately. You're writing to reschedule a meeting that was scheduled for January 10th. That's all the information that we need to know so far. When is a good time for you? This is a call to action. You're inviting the other person to tell you when is a good time, when works for them. Some options are option 1, option 2, option 3. Now, the reason that I'm recommending that you give options in this case doesn't so much have to do with writing clearly as it does with being really efficient in our email communications. It is very common for people to write to schedule something and not start with some options that work for them. And so they just stop at, well, when works for you? And then you reply with whatever works for you. And then they're like, well, no, I'm not available that day. Are you available on the 10th? And then you write back, no, I'm not available on the 10th. Are you available on the 12th? And you just go back and forth for a really long time to just schedule that one meeting. It would have been so much easier if just off the bat, the person who needs to reschedule would just say, look, here are 2 or 3 options, just pick one and we can move on. So emails are intended to be practical. They're intended to be a very quick and practical form of communication. It has become part of our culture that things that used to be a phone call are now emails, and that's okay, but be really effective in those email communications. And number 5, keep your emails short. If the person has to scroll down to read your email, that email is too long. People in law practice receive tons of emails. Some people receive hundreds of emails a day. And if every single one of those emails has these long introductions and you have to read through all of this information, what's going to end up happening is the person is not really going to read you. So remember, have a very clear goal. What are you writing for? Be very clear about that at the very beginning of the email. Make sure that your first or at most your second sentence addresses that directly. If there's a call to action, make sure that that call to action is very clear in your email. So just to recap the 5 tips that I have given you today, number 1 was If the person who you're communicating with has looped somebody in, then reply all. Keep the person in the loop unless you have a legitimate reason to cut them out, but then make sure that you address that with the person that you're communicating with. Number 2 was do not hit reply all to general emails that are not addressed at any specific person. Number 3, do not refer to professional women as Mrs. Remember, the safest way to refer or to address professional women in the workplace is their name and last name, and then just check how they reply to you and then use whatever it is they used in their reply, because that's a signal as to how they like to be addressed. Number 4 was get to the point early in your email. And tip number 5, which I seem to have lost, here I go, is keep your emails short. Make sure that your person who's reading you doesn't have to scroll down a lot to be able to get through that email. That is good email etiquette in the English speaking world. I hope that you enjoyed this video, that you found it helpful.